Just respond. Right? So I'm looking at this, and here's a choice. It might seem like an obvious choice. Well, look how much fatter this branch is than this. Why not keep both of them? They'll compete. And this one's decidedly disadvantaged because it's growing under this one. This one's stronger. It's receiving more of the energy from the tree. It's going to produce leaves above this one. And this one's fate is not so great right now. You know, it's looking like it's in an inferior position. But here's something that I've come to appreciate over time, is that you create interest through diversity of shape, too, and caliper, right? So there is a difference between the caliper of this part and this part, but there's a more dramatic difference if I take this off, right? There's more dramatic effect from that ratio of difference. Now that will mitigate over time. This is going to grow more strongly, it's going to fatten up too, but this has such a serious head start that this will always be noticeably less than this. If these are the same kind of visual weight, the same visual value, then you create a spot where the viewer potentially isn't sure what to look at, right? Where does my eye go in this composition? Now there's no doubt, your eye travels the stronger line. This becomes a secondary, almost like an accent to the main line. Okay. Yes. So this is a funky little move here, but it was done very intentionally, right? That was a cut made, and I chose the downward response. And then another cut was made, and I chose the upward response. And the whole idea is to build movement in this thing. I'm going to hold on to this till later, and I'll tell you why later. I'm not going to make that choice just yet. I'm going to move to another part of the tree. This is also something that I've come to do more frequently now and think of as a good strategy. Don't work in one spot exclusively. Don't stand here and do this until it's entirely done, and then move over here and do this until it's entirely done. Work here, turn, look at it from all angles, do a little work here, do a little work here. Work on the thing in a holistic kind of way, right? Because what you're trying to create is this whole image of a tree. It's three-dimensional. That's where that idea of having a front is very strange. Since when do three-dimensional things have fronts? When I look at a tree out there, does it have a front? No, but it may very well have a view that I think is better than the other views. And so if I were growing that same tree in a pot and I was going to show it in a show, then I would stick that most favorable view forward. So yes, if you want to say that's a front, that's a front. But in building the tree, I don't want to be thinking about fronts. I want to think about a whole tree. How to make it look good from every angle. And then
Do you normally work with the lazy Susan?
Yeah, it's very, very helpful. Yes. You'll find that too. Even with a little tree, then you need a little turntable. But being able to rotate it around and get a different look at the ease of moving your hand is very good, very useful. Here's another one. Some of these things, you cut them and they regrow, but they regrow too much in the sense that they provide more than what we actually need or want. And if you allow all of this to grow, then this part here will swell up and get rather ugly. So it's important to come back and clean up these areas by reducing the number of branches they've produced. And here again, you come across something that's regarded as a rule or a guideline, however you prefer to say it, and that is typically at any juncture you're only going to have two divergent points, right? That's not hard and fast. You can have more than that, but typically you're going to try to reduce it to just two. This one had 5, I think. Now it's down to 2. Maybe this stays, maybe it doesn't. I'm not sure yet. It stays for now. That's another thing I've learned. If I don't feel very certain about it, there's no big hurry to run out and do it, right? If I don't have a clear idea today of how it should be, then I'll look at it again tomorrow, or maybe the next day, or the day after that, or next year. Some decisions take years to make. Well, if it's a big decision, why not take years? Why not work, let the process work through and get to a point where you feel pretty confident that what you're doing is the best thing. one reason you might not do that is because you're doing a demonstration. People have a certain level of expectation, you know, let's see you make this look like a tree.
Arthur, why are you pruning now?
Why not?
In the spring.
Can't prune everything. Who asked that question?
Me.
Out. Get out. Because, one, a very practical thing is we have too many plants for me to do everything at the optimal time. I have to do some things at the less than optimal time so that I don't get run over when the optimal time
Gotcha.
comes. All right, but on the other hand, why not prune right now? What would be the danger in pruning now?
Well, it could kill things with the frost. They're not hardened off enough.
Well, I mean, this tree is dormant. It still has some leaves on it.
Well, that's a good reason.
But
because it's dormant.
Well, what's wrong with pruning something that's dormant?
Healing.
It will cover in due time. You know, if I cut it now, as opposed to cutting it in the spring, it's still going to heal at the same time. Not heal. That's a bad word to use because it's not actually healing. It's covering over. But it'll do that when it's ready to do it anyway. So you could argue that, well, less time with that big open wound, but it takes years for it to cover something like that. So that's going to be open all that while. That's why I brought this. Right? Any big wounds that I'm concerned about, I go ahead and coat them with that. And then they're sealed off for the time being.
Okay.
And the entryway is sealed off. I'm not trying to rough you up or anything. That's, in truth, there are probably lots of people in this room who were thinking the same thing. Or would be if they...
I don't have as many trees as you, so I try to go at the optimal time.
Yes, that makes good sense.
Arthur,
Jim?
you're also leaving stubs, so if there is
Yeah.
dieback, it's not going to get into the vital part that he's going to be using later. Is that not correct?
Yeah, that's correct. No, that's
So
absolutely
if you
correct.
were cut close to the branch, that would be...
Have you ever pruned a maple in spring? What usually happens? Like massive sap loss. Well, I'm talking about the immediate response to your cutting. You know, for several days afterwards, the thing runs sap. People say it's bleeding. The tree's bleeding. No, it's not bleeding.
Trying to make maple sugar candy.
That's right. If that was actually harmful to trees, then, the sugar maples of New England would have been wiped out a century ago. It's something they're capable of doing, and eventually they close that off and they stop running the sap. But the little bit that they lose is not a big deal, but it doesn't look good, for one thing. So pruning at this time of year, you don't get any of that because the tree is in essence dormant. It's like processes are on hold for the time being, largely, not entirely. Many times, these maples, especially these that I have in development, I repot them at this time of year too. And then they go through the winter and they freeze and thaw multiple times. And just like you, I was taught that would kill them. It was bad to do it. It might not be the best thing, but it is not a death sentence by any means. At least not with the plants that I've worked with.
You cut a lot of the roots, repotting, or?
Yeah, just a normal amount. Yeah, don't hold back. But, I'm usually doing that only with these things that are in an earlier stage of development. A tree that, I've invested a lot in and has been worked on for a long time, that's what I'm going to try to hold and do at the better time. So it's always like that, There's the way that you would optimally do things if you were living in the perfect world, and then there's the way that you often have to come up with to take advantage of what is actually in front of you.
Arthur,
Yes, please.
regarding your large stobs that are near the apex,
Yes, here.
at what time in its development will you be taking those out?
I'm thankful for you asking the question, and the answer is I don't know. I'm waiting to see what happens. I expect a certain amount of dieback, and with some of them you can clearly see where the dieback has occurred. Right here, cut was made here. Here's the lifeline right here, or the death line, depending on how you want to look at it. From this point on out, it's dead. From this point on back, it's still alive. if I wanted to, I could take the saw now and make a cut there, right at that line, knowing that everything I was removing was actually dead, and then the remaining living part could begin rolling that callus in. And then 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I would have something like this. Right? The wound would still be there, and I'd have a donut around it. Well, here's another one up here. In horticultural terms, strictly from horticultural terms, that's fine, because it's allowed to continue doing what it's doing. Eventually it'll do that, and then that, and then, you know, it becomes nothing more than a little bump or blemish on the bark of the tree. It takes a long time. It takes even longer when you're starting to work the top part of the plant and limit its energy and its growth, right? You're cutting down on its vigor, and that's going to slow down everything. It's going to slow down the rate of growth even when it comes to covering wounds. And so these big wounds, as I'm starting to work this plant and take more and more away from it, my expectation is those big wounds are going to take longer to cover than I have to live. That's the truth. It's going to take decades for that to really cover over. And in the meantime, it may die back anyway. You know, there's nothing says that the dieback will actually hold fast there. It could continue on down into the core of the plant. It happens. So my feeling now about stuff like that is I'm going to cut it and I'm going to wait and see what it does. If this starts to rot, right, gets pulpy, then I'm going to take a pair of pliers and pull off all the parts that will come off without me cutting. Just break it away, tear it away. And my feeling is, in most cases, the best look you're going to